Dr. Serena Reep, her title is, Are You a Victim of the Work-Life Balance Hoax? She comes from Washington, D.C. Her company is Transformational Communications. Her website, I really like this website. It's Serena, S-E-R-E-N-A, says, S-E-Z.com. SerenaSays.com. So this is it. This is our last speaker, and I want this to be huge. I want this to be big. So what are we going to do? Stand up? Yep. All right, on the count of 3, Dr. Serena is not coming up on stage unless this is like the shit. This is the bomb. You know what I mean? Okay? So on the count of 3, let's lift her off of her feet up onto this stage, and let's support the hell out of her because she's going to wow us with her talk. 1, 2, 3, Dr. Serena Reep! Woo!
Appreciate you. Hi, everybody. Hi. I have my notes here, so I apologize if I'm looking there every once in a while. I don't have a PowerPoint, but I'll try to do my best to keep you all awake at this very last hour. Let me go back about 6 years ago, and I hope you will travel with me to that point. It was a very hot, muggy, August dog days kind of afternoon in Baltimore. If any of you know the Washington, D.C. area, it's a very hot and muggy place, well, compared to San Diego for sure. Anyway, it was a Friday evening. It was close to about 7 o'clock in the evening. Everybody had left the office, and I was still working away in my office. And all of a sudden, I hear a tap on my door, and somebody peeps the head in, and it's one of my colleagues. I actually didn't think that anybody was still there. I thought everybody was gone. I was the only one working. So I was kind of surprised, and I lifted my head up to find my colleague saying, "You're still working?" I was like, "Come on, go home, get a life." So that kind of prompted me into this journey into work-life balance. I've always been interested in, and professionally as well as personally, in the concept of work-life balance, but that was the moment that clinched it for me. Something triggered in my head and said, a lot of people have this notion of what work is, what life is, and how to balance the two. And I said, I need to do something about that, because I was not only, cognizant at that moment of the difference between the way I see work and life and the way I see most other people seeing work and life. And I said, there's a disconnect there. There is a problem there, and I need to address that. So this August hot summer evening kind of propelled me into focusing more on something that I had intuitively done, professionally and personally, as I said, up to that point. As he walked out the door, and I said, yeah, and I just made fun, and said, I smiled, and I said, yeah, I'm leaving in a few minutes, and then he walked away. And I said to myself, this is my life. I am living my life. What is he telling me? Go get a life. I have a life. This is my life, and I'm very happy doing what I'm doing, where I am, what I am at this very moment. I don't have to go home to start living. I don't have to get a life. I am here. This is my life. And that kind of just, as I said, propelled me into thinking. Before I continue on, I just want to ask all of you one thing. Anybody, and as many as you can, what is the most important thing in your life right this minute? What would you say is the number one thing? Health. Yeah. Happiness. Anybody else? Connection. Okay. Purpose. Yeah. Achievement. Money. Bills. A lot of people say, physical health, loss of, weight loss, and aging parents, and children, and so on and so forth.
That was mine.
So somebody blessed whatever that was, the last answer. Anyway, the point is this. I rarely, and whenever I talk to people, I rarely find anybody saying work-life balance is their problem. Forget about whether it's number one problem or two problem, but a problem at all. The point is, most of us take that as sort of a given, or we're all trying to achieve it, but don't think of it as a very important problem in our lives, to define it as a problem and then go after it to solve it. So that's the point I want to make here. Okay, that very few of us really think of work-life balance or working toward work-life as a problem. But guess what? Most of the surveys have shown that that's the number one problem that a lot of people face every day. Okay, and it's just that they're not conscious of it enough to think of it as something that they need to solve and put it on their to-do list as something to do. So that is a very, very interesting phenomenon to me, that this is a very significant problem, things that are really affecting a large number of people, and yet nobody seems to think of it as a problem that needs to be solved. Okay, so give me a second. Okay, let's look at what it is, first of all, what a work-life balance issue is. What comes to your mind? What comes to your mind when you think of work-life balance? Anybody?
Too much work, too little time.
Right, very good. That's very important. A lot of people spend a large amount of time. In fact, most of us spend most of our wakeful hours working, right? Yep. What else? Anybody else think of some other way of describing what they see as a work-life balance? Yeah.
Being able to separate, leave work at work. And
very good, very good. Being able to separate work, put work at work and then go home and be able to do something different, not take your work problems home. Yeah, that's one, yeah?
I was just going to say what comes up for me is when I feel imbalanced, there's just a huge amount of stress on my body and I can feel it physically.
Wonderful. That's absolutely, absolutely true. One of the reasons why people get sick is the stress. All the different demands on their lives, all the different kinds of things that are every day, this and this and this, and a gazillion things overwhelming them and putting them in the kind of state of stress that causes all these other things. We think of heart attacks, we think of cholesterol, we think of hypertension, we think of all these things. But guess what's behind all these things? It's this overwhelm from all the different things that we think about, all the things that we want to do, all the things that we put on our table, and then feel guilty that we haven't accomplished all of them. We say, oh, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. Oh my God, I wish I had done that, and so on and so forth. So that is a very important but not very well acknowledged consequence of our definition of, I don't mean to say definition, our concept of work and our concept of life. Now let me step back a little bit from the things that we talked about right now and sort of take a contrary view for a minute, and because that's kind of where I'm leading. All the traditional sense of what is work and what is life is actually causing the problems, and I want to kind of get away from there and give you a totally different paradigm to align your sense of who you are. And that's my purpose here. If you leave with nothing from this conversation that we're having here, that's the one thing that I want to leave you with, and that is shift to a different paradigm from what we have right now, all the things that we just talked about so far. Now, I kind of hinted at it in the very first couple of minutes when I talked about the colleague coming into my office and asking me to go have a life, get a life. But one of the problems of defining work as something that you do 9 to 5, and then you go home and then have a life, is that when you're working, you're not living. Isn't that the definition? I mean, isn't that the idea? Yeah. Okay. And when you're living, you're not working. Oh my God. And I see this in a lot of my practice, in a lot of my consulting. People who are on workaholics particularly, but a lot more people than just those who are workaholics, when they're on vacation, they're feeling guilty that they haven't done this, they haven't done that, all these other things are waiting for them at work when they get back. So they're not enjoying the vacation that they're on. And when they're working, they're thinking about their kids' baseball games or their piano lessons, or they're thinking about their spouse and not being able to spend as much time, and guilt about being at work and doing these whatever, whether it's a task that they're committed to or not, but still doing it for a paycheck. Doesn't really matter, but we're kind of torn in these two ways. And that's predominantly because we define them as two ends of the spectrum. How many times have you seen, whenever you see this concept of work-life balance, you see this balance there, on so many websites. That's the one thing that I refuse to put on my website, saying it's about work-life balance. I said, no, that is not what it is. I want to have a different concept. I want to teach people differently to look at work and to look at life. Okay. So what I'm trying to now do is make people understand the implications of being torn this way, looking at life as something that you start after work, or work that you do just to make a living. Okay. For example, and one of the reasons why I was very struck not too long ago when I look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it said 67% of workers are unhappy with where they are, what they do, what their work situation is. It kind of threw me for a little bit. And I said to myself, if 2/3 every 2 out of 3 people that you come across is unhappy with what he or she is doing, imagine the implications for the mental health. And here I am, a psychologist, if I didn't introduce myself that way before. My doctorate is in social psychology. And I'm thinking, what are the consequences of living in a world where 2/3 of the working population is unhappy with what they're doing? And to add to that, we're working longer and longer, right? We're spending more and more time at work, less and less time to do other things, especially now technology, and I call that like a jail on wheels, because we take our iPads with us, we take our computers with us, we take our telephones with us, and so on. So it's never out of our reach. We're all the time thinking about working and or actually working. Okay, so this has become a situation where we have enormous pressures, where there are internally generated or externally generated. Either the employer expects us to log in 9 o'clock in the evening after dinner to check our emails to see what's going on at work, or expects us to answer the call if we are on the beach just because there's an emergency at work, and so on. So basically what's become sort of a segmented life at one time. Early on in the early stages of industrialization, we went to work, punched a clock, did the stuff that we had to do, and we came home, and the rest of our life was ours, at least. We were much more clearly able to separate the work from life. It's not like that anymore. It's not like that anymore. We live the work. So that creates additional problems that we need to work with. So how in the world are we going to have a healthy life, a healthy environment, a healthy world, when 2/3 of us are unhappy almost all the time, because we're working almost all the time? Okay. So this is the reason for my wanting to create a new paradigm. Create a new sense of what work is, a new sense of what life is, and how to merge the two together. What if? I don't know whose bottle this is. I'm going to steal it. Sorry about that. I'm sure that was not a very healthy thing to do, but sorry. I needed to just, I should have brought some. Anyway, apologize for that.
All oral family here. From everybody's water.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. How many of you are familiar with this concept called cognitive dissonance? Wonderful, lots of you.
Can you say it again?
Cognitive dissonance. That's a fancy word for something very simple. Can you, David, would you like to tell us what that means?
For me,
Whatever it means to you is fine. It doesn't have to be some textbook definition.
what it means to me is when I have one belief or a way of thinking that comes into conflict with an opposing belief, and then I have to make a choice of which one of those two.
Very good. Yep, exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to quote, not quote, I'm
David.
Use Suzanne Evans for a second. It means you're fucked up.
That's the consequence of this. Yeah, okay. Very good. Yeah.
From what I understand is, let's say someone says, she sings, and then she speaks, but they heard sing first, and they can't absorb the fact that I also speak, or I also train, and they stay stuck on thinking singing. That they hear one thing first, and then, even though you're saying something else, they remember and stays with them that first thing they heard.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Gosh, now I have 3 quarters here. It's better to have too much than too little anyway. I'll put them in. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you all. Okay, so here is in the context of this work-life balance, cognitive dissonance comes, and all of you are pretty much right on, and that is when you think one thing or you value one thing, but you end up doing another. Just like we talked about just now, you know, most of us, maybe not all of us, believe either family is number 1, God number 2, and work number 3, or some of us who are more religious would say God number 1, family number 2, and then work number 3. When we ask what are our priorities in life, right? I mean, that's pretty typical. At least that's what most of us have seen happen. But what we do, we actually spend the largest amount of time on the thing that is the lowest on our priority. That's where this concept of cognitive dissonance comes in. We feel very guilty about the doing things we do, and yet we feel like we got to do it because that's how we make a living. So how, if it's at all possible, can we change this cognitive dissonance? First of all, before I say how we can change it, let me say the mind changes it anyway, because cognitive dissonance is a very destabling kind of a thing in your mind. It doesn't stay that unstable, that destable situation for very long. It resolves it. Whether you consciously resolve it or not, it does it on its own, for its own survival. But how does it resolve it? One of 2 ways generally happens. It doesn't mean this is the only 2 ways that the problem is resolved, but 2 dominant ways. One is we blame ourselves. We say, hey, I'm not smart enough to create a balance in my life. Everybody is telling me, all these experts in work-life balance are telling me how to do it. They're telling me what to do it. And I'm not able to do it in my life. So I must be the problem. So if I can just learn these techniques, if I just learned these tricks, how to balance my work with my life, I'd be fine. So the problem is me. So let me go to seminars, go to counseling, go do lots of different things in order to be able to solve it. Okay. The other response that the mind has to this cognitive dissonance is to blame the employer, blame the one who caused us that, and say, oh, that damn job, or that stupid boss that I have basically made me a slave to my paycheck and is like blackmailing me with that paycheck to say, you're here 10 hours or 12 hours or 14 hours or whatever it is, the amount of time that's demanded of you to get to your job and stay in your job and do what you have to do. Say, oh, that's where the problem is. I'm not the problem. So one way or the other, your mind has to kind of solve that dissonance between what is important for me and what I'm actually doing. Now let me from there go to a better way, a paradigm shift that I talked about a little while ago as to what we need to do. My way of looking at things and the way I teach and profess and live my own life, not just talk about it and train people and teach people, is with this question. It starts with this question. What if? What if we could make work into life and life into work and make them both fun? What could we do to fuse the two together? And I know at this point, I'm like, at least I feel like I'm taking coal to Newcastle, because you guys are very special, very different from most of the people that I talk to. You know, corporations are spending millions of dollars on work-life balance perks, you know, and they have no clue. They're spending millions of dollars and getting nowhere and getting no results. But the reason why I say you guys are special is because you have something that I normally teach. So in that sense, you're a little bit ahead of other people, and that is, I'm talking about combining the two in a way that every minute of the life, every minute of the time of your day, your week, your life, you're living on purpose. You're living, well, hopefully you are, and if you're not, you're here to learn how to do that. So in that sense as well, you're more special than a lot of other people. But that's my message. You cannot make work something that you're unhappy with. You cannot be doing something that you're unhappy with, because the consequences, the health consequences, the financial consequences, the emotional consequences are very, very grave. So you need to step back a little bit and say, what am I doing? Why am I doing? Does this fit in with my sense of who I am? And then try to bring the two together to make money while you are living your purpose. Now, in that context, I want to talk about the 3 M's, that one of my principles that I talk about. The 3 M's that I'm referring to are, in fact, one of the 3 you've heard a couple of times already, which I was kind of surprised about, because in other places that I talk to, nobody ever, not that they haven't heard these names, but not in the context that I'm talking about. But you have a little bit of a concept already from the last 3 days. The 3 M's I'm talking about are Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr. What do these 3 people have in common? They, the way I'm looking at it and the way I'm asking you to look at it, they are the most unbalanced people in the world. Most unbalanced people in the world. And now I always used to think, you know, before this, the 6-year time frame and the thing that happened to me that I was thinking of, I always used to think, I'm so unbalanced. Why am I happy? It doesn't make sense, because people are telling me that I have to do this and this and this to be happy, but I'm not doing any of those things. You know, I'm so unidimensional. It used to always kind of bug me as to what is wrong with me. I mean, I can't, this doesn't make sense, because that's not what everybody is telling me. But then, as I said, that day, it kind of crystallized for me, what is different? Why am I different, and what is it that's causing that? Until then, it was just very intuitive. Now, coming back to the 3 M's that I'm talking about, these 3 people, there are plenty others, I'm just using them because in my principle I talk about the 3 M's, so here the convenient 3 M's that I can talk about, is that they lived their purpose. Everything that they did, every breath they took, every step they took in their lives, every word that came out of their mouth was on purpose. There was no splitting hairs about this or that or whatever. In fact, I give a kind of a humorous analogy to, not so much analogy, but an example of how even the concept of anything but what they're doing is unthinkable. You know, I try to tell my students or my protégés, try to imagine this. Try imagine walking up to Mother Teresa. God rest her soul, she passed away a few years ago, as you all know. But imagine, for the sake of argument, that she's still alive. You know, imagine walking up to her and saying, no, 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 you're doing it all wrong. You need to have tennis once a week. You know, You need to go to Bahamas on vacation 2 weeks a year. You need to recharge your batteries, otherwise you're no good. Right. Imagine telling her. I mean, the whole concept, like you guys are laughing, and that's absolutely appropriate to do that, because it just seems so ridiculous, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay? Why? Because we expect something of her on the basis of what we think, right? Okay. Now, why do we expect ourselves to be any different? If we admire their life, if we admire what they've done and how they've lived, and that's how we want. We don't have to be carbon copies of Mother Teresa or Mahatma Gandhi, but we learn something from them. That is living on purpose. And everything else has to revolve around it, whatever that purpose is, whatever that mission is that we see in our lives. Okay? And that's what I try to teach people. That's what I try to give a framework, a blueprint for life to people. I want to cut short a large portion of what I'm saying. Somebody will be passing some sheets, if that's all right. And here's what I want to do. As I tremendously cut short my conversation about it, but it is coming out as a chapter in Brian Tracy's book called Change Agents. Okay, and I will be very happy to send you a free copy of that chapter. Every single one of you who's willing to put down your address and your phone number there, even if you don't buy my program, that's perfectly okay. If you would like to, I would very much like to work with you, but if not, put your address and your email address for sure, and I will send you that chapter that I'm doing for Brian Tracy's book. It hasn't come out yet. It will be coming out in a couple of months, but I'll be very happy to send all of you the chapter, number one. Number two, I also want you to put not just your email address, which I can send, but also your physical address, because this is what I'm going to do. 5 copies of the book. When Brian Tracy and that book comes out, The Change Agents comes out, I will be randomly picking, which will happen very shortly, I'll randomly pick 5 names out of the things and physically send you. I will pay the postage in addition to it's being no cost to you. I will send it to you in the mail, that book. One more thing, I also did a book with Jack Canfield last year, and my concept is very similar to that, and I have that. I'm willing to send 5 copies of that book, again, postage free to you, if you put your address. That's the reason why I want your email as well as your address, so that once I pick your name, you're one of the 10 people who'll get one of either the 5 of this book, so the Jack Canfield book or the Brian Tracy book. I will send that to you at my expense completely. So please do me a favor and put your name and address there. And my program, again, I don't have time to go into it, but there's a lot of bullets in there, the things that are involved. And it's like every month, that's the price of a dinner. That's 4 hours every month, once a week, 1-hour call on various aspects of work-life balance, okay? And I think it's a tremendous deal. Next year on January, starting January 2014, it's gonna be $100 every month, okay? But right now, this is what I'm doing for all of you. So I'm here if you need me. But please at least fill out that so that I'd be able to send you something for you to know a little bit more about what I think, what I feel, and how you might be able to benefit from that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Give it up for Serena, Dr. Serena.
Thank you.
Right here. This is a beautiful example of generosity.
Thank you.
Generosity.
Thank you.
Am I on? All right.
So grateful.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.